Good afternoon. I'm Wade Atkinson, pastor of First Church of Religious Science in New York City. And yes, there are still a few churches around. So I invite you to come see us when you're in New York. It's my pleasure to present our speaker this afternoon, Dr. Barbara Lunde. She's spiritual leader of the Boca Raton Church Center for Spiritual Living. And Barbara was the daughter of Dr. Barbara Lunde, Dr. Norman Lunde, who was the founder of the Fort Lauderdale Church of Religious Science. And such, they had a very special relationship with Ernest Holmes. And so Barbara grew up really on the knees of Ernest Holmes. Dr. Raymond Charles Barker has pictures of her from early childhood with Ernest Holmes. So we're here today to celebrate her memories of Dr. Ernest Holmes.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you very much. Well, the first picture I had, and I'll be able to show all of you afterwards, is a bust that was made by Dr. Celeste Turkin's father, who was a famous sculptor, and he made a bust of Ernest Holmes. And it's so much, it's a definite likeness of Ernest, and we love having it. I used to put it on our stage, and then I used to say, but Ernest wouldn't want to be up here on the stage. He would not want, us to be doing this. But I left it up there for a long, long time, and now I have it in the bookstore. But it's something I really treasure. It's beautiful. So I came from a metaphysical family because my grandfather, my mother's dad, was a metaphysician. He was always talking about your potential, your possibilities. He just knew in himself. And so this is the way he talked to all of us, and it was beautiful. It was wonderful. And when I was a child, I lived in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I went to a Divine Science Sunday school. So yes, I was definitely raised in New Thought. And when we were ready to move to Southern California, because my father was shipped overseas in the Navy and we were kind of following him, my grandfather said, look up a man named Ernest Holmes when you get there. So we were already anxious to meet this man. And so when my father got out of the service, we all went to the Wiltern Theater. And we loved him from the very moment we heard him. My family bought a home in Alhambra, California at that time, and so we found the Religious Science Church there, which was Dr. Carmelita Trowbridge, and we joined and fell in love with her and the teaching all over again, and it was wonderful. My parents just got involved. They started taking every class. They headed up the youth and the Sunday school, and then they started a teen group. So they were very, very much involved. And then my parents went down to Los Angeles to study with Ernest also and do further studying. And Ernest invited them into his private Tuesday group. So all the while they would go to that Tuesday morning group, and must have been wonderful. I never went. I saw a lot of the notes from it, and it was fabulous, just sitting and listening to Ernest. So one thing I'd like to say about Dr. Carmelita Trowbridge is she was elegant, and she was a master teacher. She was just fabulous. And my grandfather and my dad would escort her in. She wore long flowing gowns and robes, and they would escort her into a meeting, and as my mother would say, the doors would slam in my mother and grandmother's face as they escorted Carmelita forward. But it was just a joke because we all loved Carmelita. She was a special lady. This picture, which you can all see later, really is the first seminar in the High Sierras, 1953. And Ernest Holmes spoke in the morning and at night. It was quite a rustic camp, and we all had a fabulous time. They didn't have any particular youth activities, but we just all had a good time together. was really a very special thing. And then I have a picture of Ernest with people. What's that one?
I have a picture of Ernest with you.
Oh, that's good. But I have a picture that I want you all to see later of Ernest in a group of people, and he's in the middle. It just kind of shows Ernest. These people, these women were hugging him, and he was just in the group. He wasn't, that's it. Yeah, that's it. It's a beautiful picture of him. And just, he's right in the middle. And that was Ernest, wasn't it? He wasn't standoffish or better than the rest or anything else. He was part of the group. He wanted to know what everyone was thinking and what do you think of this and what'll we do next? And he was just a lovable man, a lovable man. So at Asilomar, my parents were the head of the youth group there. And so the first Asilomar, we all went to, the teens, I was a teen then, and we all went to the regular Asilomar. We didn't have our own camp. But we had a dorm, which has been torn down from Asilomar now, but a long dorm. And that's where we slept. And there's a picture of my dad waking up in the dorm room because they played rock around the clock early in the morning to wake everybody up. So it was great fun. The teens had their own classes, but we always went to hear Ernest. He spoke the final evening, at the final part of the day, and it was wonderful. I just, remember how I felt and being there and listening to him, and I can say I didn't understand everything he said, but I felt everything he said, and I loved it. It was magnificent. So, and then the teens would have their own meetings. Actually, Adela Rogers, St. John's, was one of our favorite speakers. Ernest would teach the classes, and we always ended the day with peace prayer, which we would have something to sing. Now, the music at that first Asilomar, and many of the first Asilomars, was different. There was an organist in Los Angeles, and she would bring her organ. They would bring the organ in, and it would be organ music. That was the music at Asilomar, we didn't have the music that we have today. And even the kids, we would sing Open My Eyes and Onward Souls Eternal, but then of course we also had our rock and roll music. But I think, I'm wondering how Ernest would feel about it all. He was very adaptable, and I'm sure he would love all the changes that go on. But some of the kids from the Los Angeles youth group wanted to serenade him with We Come to the Garden. We used to sing that in the churches too, We Come to the Garden. And so they were all ready to do it, and some of the adults came out and said, no way, are you going to disturb Ernest? And so they went ahead and did it anyway, and Ernest came down and out, and he talked to them for an hour. He loved it. He loved the kids. He loved being part of everything that was going on. So that was so much fun to know him, and he was always posing for pictures. I've got some with Peggy Lee. She was there at those first Asilomars. And Hazel would be there, and everyone posing. And Canon Gottschalk, he was a Presbyterian minister that he knew for many years, and he would come to Asilomar with his robes. And Ernest would make fun. Oh, can I kiss your ring? He'd say, and he'd make fun. And there's one of him, Ernest, kneeling on the ground. I don't remember what he was doing, but being silly of some way. He was making some kind of a joke. He was always joking and being lighthearted and fun. And with all the wisdom that he gave us, this other side of him was so beautiful and so wonderful. So Hazel was loved by everybody too. I have a beautiful picture of Hazel looking at Hornaday, and she just with such love. Yeah, there's Ernest kneeling down at Asilomar in that area in front of the Crocker Hall. Was that still always the Crocker Hall, the dining hall? And the cars used to come in at that. You could park all around in all those 50 cars, the year 50. It was fun. So One year, Ernest came up on the bus with the kids. Now you can imagine, kids are singing and loud, and there were 2 busloads of us that went up. And one year, Ernest was right in with the kids. Yeah, on there it shows some of us as we got out of the bus. You can see Ernest there too, and probably in his plaid shirt, which he loved, his favorite shirt. So, back in
The plaid jacket.
plaid jacket, yeah. Then, yeah, actually, this is him in his plaid. This picture was taken outside of Silmar, and I love that picture. Yeah. And anyway, when back in Los Angeles, my dad was becoming a minister, taking all the classes, and so he had a little office in between Hornaday and Holmes, a tiny little office. And my dad was head of the ushers at the Wiltern Theater. And I've got a picture of that too, and my dad was one of the ministers at headquarters because he would give the lectures at the synagogue on Wednesday night. They had lectures, yeah.
This is the center.
Yeah, and I have some literature about that too, that everyone can look at afterwards. But my brother, who delivered groceries, it was his job to deliver groceries, happened to have Ernest Holmes on his route. And so he would deliver groceries to Ernest Holmes, and if Ernest was home, he would go out into the garden with my brother and talk for hours, and just what's going on, Blake, and what do you think of this? And they had a wonderful time looking at his garden and talking about life. My brother always remembers that and how much that meant to him. And I got one of Louise Hornaday's collies. She raised collies. And I got one of her dogs, Ginger, and I had that dog for many, many years. I loved that dog. And I know that Ernest loved dogs. And don't we love people who love dogs? It just says something about them. And right now I have 3 dogs in my home. My daughter lives with me and she has a dog. My grandson lives with me and he has a dog and I have a dog. So it's a happy house. I think it was Hazel's suggestion to Ernest that they send my dad to Miami to take over the church. There was someone who was kind of teaching something strange in the name, as goes on sometimes. And so my dad went to Miami and he restarted the church there. And it was just supposed to be for a while, but they fell in love with my dad. And so we all ended up moving to Florida. And after a while, my mother became a minister, and so my mother taught in the Fort Lauderdale church, and my dad taught in Miami, and they lived in the middle, and both of them got in their cars in the morning and drove in opposite directions. So we kind of had everything covered there. Eventually, my dad joined my mother in the Fort Lauderdale church, and they built a big, beautiful church there. And Ernest visited my folks after Hazel had passed away in 1958 for 3 weeks, I think it was. And they traveled all over the state of Florida, speaking at different places and drawing huge crowds. And also they went to the tourist places and showed Ernest all around. And Ernest at that time said he felt the same pioneer spirit in Florida that he had felt in California. And I always remember that. That was, yeah. And also he told my folks, he stayed in their home and he told them, don't disturb me for the first hour, I will be meditating. And that's exactly what happened. The rest of the day, he'd just be having a lot of fun. He cooked. One day he put on an apron and he's out there cooking. They didn't know what he was making, and my mother was out washing the car. She always remembers this because Ernest came out with his apron on and said, what are you doing? A man's job. And she said, well, look at you. And they talked on the porch about how silly all those things were that we used to live by. And one time, anyway, he made strawberry shortcake that I'll never forget. It was delicious. And he would go out in the patio and they would sit on the chairs and sun out there. My mother liked to get her son, and Ernest would sit with her and they'd talk. One night they talked all night. Just, you know, how you're just talking about life and everything, and so they're talking all night. And then Ernest said, "So this is where the sun comes up like thunder." The sun was coming up, and, you know, some song like that. He said, "So this is it." Ernest gave the Sunday lectures in Miami when he was there, and he was there also to present my dad with his doctorate. And so when they would go out shopping, and they had these cute little beanie, this is so fun, they bought these hats, and when they would go around Miami Beach or wherever they were, Ernest would go, "Dr. Lunde, doctor." You know, he was a new doctor, and so that was just, you know, that was Ernest. He was playful and so much fun, and you know, he really wasn't holier than thou or anything like that, and yet wherever he was, people felt his spiritual authority. You know, I mean, you just felt here is someone that I can listen to, that I need to listen to. And so my dad at that time said, "This is where 6'3" looks up to 5'3", because that's what Ernest was, 5'3", but you never thought of him as being short. Ernest gave my parents the key to his home when they were going to come to to California for meetings. And one morning, my dad and Ernest left early, and my mom found a note on her bedroom door. It says, "Breakfast is ready, cream chip beef is on the stove, bread and toaster, enjoy." That was Ernest. He was just so thoughtful, and he loved to cook, he loved to putter around in the kitchen. And I have been going to Maine in recent years. Now, I knew Ernest is from Maine. He was born in Lincoln, Maine. So I had to go visit Lincoln, Maine, and look around and find from the archives where of course it's not there anymore, their old farmhouse, but I just felt so excited to be there where he was born. And then I went to Bethel, Maine, where he was a young boy, and that was the last of his schooling. He went to the Gould Academy there in Bethel, Maine, and I think he quit about 15 years old. He didn't care for formal education anymore, and he was educated all his life in many, many ways, and he spoke in colleges and had many, many honorary degrees. But he was the city records. Oh, that was so exciting. When we were in Bethel, Maine, we went to the city records and we found where their home was there, and we found out that the family attended this church, and it was built in 1800 something, and he and his brother used to pump the organ. And that's what they would do there. I mean, it was just thrilling to stand there on the steps where he had been. So I was I was the oldest grandchild, so my grandfather sent me as something special to Brown School for Girls for my 11th and 12th grade in Glendora, California. Beautiful school. And it was a wonderful experience. But we had chapel, I think, every day. And in chapel, they talked about hell and damnation and being saved and stuff, frankly, I had never heard. I don't know where, I mean, I was raised in New Thought, and I don't know. I'd never heard of all this stuff. And so I came home. The school was first grade to high school, through high school. And so it kind of concerned me that they were talking to the little children this way too. You're going to burn in hell unless you get saved, or whatever it was. And so of course, I went home, and this is where I really got serious about the teaching and started to take classes, really learn what it's all about. And I talked to Ernest about it too. And because I said, I was concerned for those little children, and he said, it's okay. He said, he told me about his experience in church, and if it was a particularly fiery talk, on the way home, his father would say, "Don't you listen to that. That's not the truth. There is no evil. There is no devil. You don't have to listen to a word of that." And so he said, you can just, if you see some little children frightened, you just might go up and just tell them, God is love, and you're loved, and don't worry. Just say little things. Of course, I'm not going to change their religion, whatever those people were there to hear, but I know I wanted to help those little children know none of that was the truth. So I can hear Ernest. I can just hear him. When I read the textbook, I hear Ernest's voice, and that's so exciting to me. And I could just hear him. He would stop, and some of you have heard recordings. He would just stop what he was saying. It was just eloquent, and he would tell a joke, or he would just burst into poetry, and his voice would change, and it would be beautiful, and he might even cry. He was just such an interesting speaker. He just carried you right along with him. He was a lovable man, a down-to-earth man who loved people and animals and nature, and he loved his Hazel. And of course, after she made her transition, he always said to a lot of people that he wished to just follow her, and he wasn't here that much longer after she left. In Miami, there was one of his cousins, Adela Chadwick, was a practitioner in the Miami church when my dad was the minister there. And she told that when she visited Ernest in Venice in the early 20s, she just observed him and listened to what he was saying, and she said, I think you've got something here. I like the way you're living your life, and I like what you're saying. But if you'd call it a religion, she said, I would have run like the Dickens. But since you call it a science, she said, I can learn it, because I learned the science of mathematics, of chemistry and physics, and I can learn the science of what you're teaching. So in 1930, she took all the courses at the Institute, and then Ernest asked her to create some kind of class to find out what practitioners know. So she said, once we get this class organized, then you and Reg Armour and Clarence Meyer can conduct it. And so she created this class where first you get the Science of Mind lesson, then you learn how to do treatment, then you work on a case, and then you tell what the case is, what the diagnosis of the doctor was, or what your diagnosis too, and then what is your treatment, and then you write it all out and you explain your results. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. But Adela said, by this time you could put your finger on every single one that really knew what they were talking about. And that was the beginning of the practitioner's clinic. So it's kind of interesting how it all came together, isn't it? She said that, I love this, she said that Ernest loved to read, of course, and had a terrific memory. We all know this too. And one time Adela and Ernest's mother were knitting or playing cards or something, and Ernest was reading in front of the fireplace. And he said, listen, girls, this is what so-and-so says. And then he would read it, and then he'd say, and this is the way I would say it. Then he would put everything the person had said in several pages into 1 or 2 paragraphs and make it so much clearer. And when you think of what he did, he studied all those philosophies and religion, all the things that he studied, and how he put it all together and took what was that thread that ran through everything, and how he made this science of mind for all of us to study and to learn by. How amazing it is. It made it as a way of life. That's really what it is, isn't it? It's something we live every day of our lives. It's not something we go to Sunday about, or one compartment in our life. It's our life, and it's so beautiful. And the thing about it, I think, we talk a lot about open at the top, and I think that's what our teaching is, because we don't have, here's what you got to learn, and these are it, and you parrot it back to me, and this is it, and this is as far as it goes, as some religions are. No, this is find the divine within yourself, find who you are, and live it and love it. And there's no limit to what you can learn and be and do and have. And so that's like, there's no lid on what we do. And there's no, we're not looking for, you know, I have people in my center, they come and they say, wow, the first time, this is what I've been looking for all my life. We've all heard that, right? I love this teaching. This is wonderful. And many of them come, and they come on Sundays and they love it, and they love it on Sundays, and they have it like a positive thing, a positive way of life, which is very popular and more popular now. But science of mind is so much more than that. There's a higher power at work in and through all of us, and we understand the creative process, and we learn spiritual mind treatment. And Ernest lived this teaching all his life. He did treatments always. He did treatments for other people, he did treatments for himself, and he asked other people to treat for him. And so he really lived this. And it was like our teaching, you know, I teach first year, or I had been up until my daughter's a minister now, who knew? And but it does run in the family, I guess. And so she's teaching the first year now, but I'm kind of going back to it because I miss it. And I always loved it that I could teach it every year. You know, if I weren't a minister, maybe I would miss a few years. And because I'm a minister, I'm teaching class. I'm here. Don't we learn every time we open the book, every time we teach something, we're learning. There's no end to this learning. It's forever. And so that's what's so exciting to me. Ernest had a fabulous memory, and well, I was saying that some people will go to classes. They'll go on Sundays, and then others get interested and go to classes, and then they're more interested in the teaching. Why, there's much more to it. And then there's also the people who leave always in search of a new healer, a new thing that will bring them, they say that life is a search for God. I think it is. That bottom line, that's what it is. We're searching for God. And we're learning that God is within us. But there's so much outside stuff about God, and that people get involved in, and they're looking for their angel guides and the psychic messages and the latest charm, and then very often they'll come back and they'll say, I'm back. I'm back where I belong. This is the teaching. I'm through searching around for that final something out there. And I think that's it. We're all learning. We're all learning. We're learning to be. We learn about prayer. Real prayer is treatment, and I love the name of it because I love for people to know the difference. I love the idea that we don't believe in a God that has everything arranged and all planned out for every one of us. We're free. We're free beings, and how open and wonderful life is for all of us. So I love the teaching. I just think it's fabulous, and I love teaching it, and I guess that's why I don't think of retiring. I'm older now than Ernest was when he passed away. I'm older than my dad was, and he passed away. But I'm not thinking about retiring yet. Although I have my daughter coming up, and I kind of wonder about my grandchildren. Maybe they'll all be in it. We all love it. But back in 1953 at the High Sierras, at this wonderful camp, it ended with what they call the Sermon on the Rock. And Ernest... now there's a whole book, seminar lectures that were made at this week during this camp, and I remember sitting on that rock. The whole bunch of us were sitting on that rock. Ernest was standing there with the sunsets behind him, and he gave this most wonderful, let's take this home down into the valley and down into our homes, what we've had here this week. And when we're at a Sillamar or we're at a convention like this, what we receive and how we feel when we leave. Well, that's, we were all just so inspired. And he just said, let's take this home and love each other and love the world and put this into our life. And isn't that what we're all doing anyway? All of us here, we're teaching and practicing. And we couldn't be teachers without practicing this. And that's the whole of it. We're really practicing it first. And we keep practicing it, and we keep finding it more and more exciting and more wonderful. So, let's see. I just, well, I don't know, do we have any questions? Oh, look who's here.
Yes.
Look who's here. It's Ernest himself, isn't it?
Get the movie.
No, that's so wonderful.
Tell them what, so they may not know.
Yes, he's going to be in a movie. He's Ernest in the movie, and he is like Ernest, so this is beautiful. He's going to be talking to...
And I want you to meet Sue. She is the producer of the film. She's right.
He is sensational. He's
Yeah.
very, very wonderful. He's our star.
Yes.
The
Yes.
website is, what is it, Jeff?
ErnestHolmesLife.com.
Life. You can go and see
ErnestHolmesLife.com,
the
lowercase. It's an 11-minute trailer.
teaser. Yeah.
Did you wear a plaid shirt?
I wore a
Yes.
plaid shirt. Yes.
He did.
Yeah.
Very good.
Two.
Two plaid shirts, yes, right. So we looked like he wasn't doing it all at once. So I changed costume. Good.
That's Adela Rogers St. John's there, and she did a lot of teaching then and
Yes,
was a
in fact,
wonderful,
Adela's in the
inspiring
movie.
woman.
Adler, we have an Adler.
We have an Adler in the movie. There's
Yes,
the
yes.
it's
Oh.
in your program. Isn't it?
Yeah.
We use it as a fundraiser.
We have Adler and we have Reg Armour, and another star of the movie is played herself, and she's here.
Oh, yes.
This is
Marilyn plays
Dr.
herself.
Marilyn Leo, who is Dr. Reg Armour's daughter.
Yeah.
And lived right next door to Ernest Holmes, and I love the books that she has put together and written. I love those.
But you know, the thing, if I can just interject, she tells really interesting personal things that she's never written about, that we have her now on film talking about the pigs and the chickens.
Wonderful.
And all those very special, homey things is what we were trying to do with this video. To see another side of Ernest reminiscing with his family and friends. And
Oh.
here she is. And then we also have his musical director, who must be, how old, do you think? Plays the songs still.
Yeah, playing Ernest music.
Yeah, Richard Fravor, he was the
Yes.
last.
Yes,
He's stayed on for the Beverly Hills Church for
yes.
29 years.
He's just the cutest thing. And he says about Ernest always saying, where did you get that song? And it was a poem that Ernest had said, 2 Sundays before, and so he wrote the music, and so in the video, Richard says, we did. And he says, we did, which is very cute with all of that. So
In the,
thank you.
Yes.
in the movie, I'm doing a version of Ernest's voice. Anyhow, and I'm kind of talking like it. Marilyn said I didn't quite have it. Somebody called me in the meeting in here and said, saw the trailer, really loved it, and was writing this. And your voice was great. I said, yeah, I said, but it's not Maine. Because Dr. Holmes was born in Maine and had
Right.
a Maine accent.
Right.
Actually, I was with Fenwick Holmes the last 3 years of his life, and the voice I was doing was actually Fenwick.
So that was his brother, so pretty
That was his
close,
brothers,
right?
but they talked like it was.
Yeah.
And they both kind of came up out alive from this
Yeah.
record, so anyhow, it's wonderful. I hope all of you order for your church and have it there and do a fundraiser, and you're gonna have a wonderful program set for everybody who does it.
Yes.
And,
Well, in other words, we have, the main thing I want is for every community, every church to know how to put on events with excellence. So that you really know how to do big ones, small ones, but I've got a manual with every single tab of what you need to do. And so if you ever have questions, you can go there, because about 3 years ago, I went to a roundtable session, and here were these wonderful ministers, and once they found out I was an event coordinator, that's all they talked about. They wanted to know how to do. And so this has kind of been germinating for a long time.
Beautiful,
So
beautiful.
it's a training and funding.
Good.
Yeah.
Are there questions in the back?
Oh, Maryland's.
I'm
Let's
gonna ask
let
you
her
a
speak
question.
first.
What?
You want me?
Yes, you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we want you to speak first.
You had mentioned the organist, Solomar, lived in Irma Glen.
Irma Glen.
Irma Glen.
And and it was interesting because, you know, she wrote music to, with Ernest and all
Yes.
that. And someone contacted me a couple of years ago and said, "What can you tell me about Irma Glen?" And I said, "Well, I really don't know much about her." And he said, "She was a world-renowned organist. She'd
Yes,
gone
she
all
was.
over the world, and I didn't know that."
Yes, she
Yeah.
was. And George Goulding.
Yeah.
Wow.
George, yes, I knew that.
In fact, I have some sheet music of Ernest that I'm gonna give to the archives. It's music from that period.
Yeah, great.
After I make copies and give it to my music director to do something with this.
I love, Jay, that you've always done that at Silmar, that you
Yeah, we did the
brought
home.
Ernest.
And I was
To life.
every year at Asilomar and RSI, for 28 years, I did the Sermon by the Sea in the chapel where Ernest did it. And
Yeah.
I was a great honor. That's, you know, Ernest said that the only thing he would request is that we teach it like it is.
Yes.
Teach it like it is. And that was his main charge to the future.
Yes.
Yeah. There.
You know, I was really, I was fascinated, I'm so fascinated by anything we can hear about him. I'm so grateful to you. I thought, and who knows, but I thought he enjoyed perfect health his whole life until Hazel died. Is that true, or, and then sort of, then he had heart problems, and died quickly, a couple of years after she died, 3 maybe? So
I'll tell the story about that if you will.
how was he, and because you mentioned that, I was kind of surprised to hear you mention that he was lecturing after she died.
Yes.
I can tell those about those 3 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would love to hear that.
Yes.
I was just wondering if he died of a broken heart, but maybe not.
People often say that it was a broken heart, but it wasn't only her death, it was other things that were going on in the organization and that. But he was always healthy, and and one time that I remember, he said, this must be what a cold is like.
Yeah.
We'll have to do something about that. Anyway, he wasn't sick
She didn't
at
tell
all.
us.
And he, let's see, wish I could remember the date, in March of 1960, right after Founders opened.
Yes.
It started it opened in January. He gave 6 weeks of one service. Hornaday gave the second service at 11:30. Ernest did the 9, I think it was 9 o'clock or something. My dad did meditation before that. Anyway, that went on for 6 weeks, and then about mid-March, he had a stroke. And then he passed on April 7th, I believe.
Yes.
And that's, he wasn't feeling well the last year, the last 6, 8, 9 months, because the executor of his estate is still living, and so I still get information. If you've read my book, there's a whole chapter by
Bill Lynn.
Yeah, Bill Lynn. And I keep receiving things of Ernest. Right now, I have in my room, which are going to the archives, his hairbrushes. And a shoehorn.
Oh.
And his,
Cute.
he and Hazel and Ernest, I think it's their birth certificates if I remember, marriage license. Jerome married them, his marriage certificate. there's a suitcase that I couldn't carry. I wouldn't check it in the airlines, and so, but we have somebody that drove here and brought it to us, and it will be driven to the archives. Suitcase that we used, right now it's empty. Just stuff like that. You know, we have one of his shirts. My mother gave me some of his shirts, and I gave them to people years and years and years ago. And then some years later, one of them came back to me and said, "You might want this." And the buttons had fallen off, but the buttons were in the pocket.
Oh,
So,
oh,
you know, the threads.
oh,
So
beautiful.
that's the archives. That's
It's
the
on
archives.
display now at the archives.
Yeah.
So I guess my question then is, that those last 3 years after Hazel died, then he was cheerful and working. And
He wrote the book with his brother.
Yes, Boy
The-
Celestial was
Yeah,
the last.
Boy
So
Celestial,
he
I
was
don't know.
busy
And volume 3 of the Holmes papers is the transcription of those lectures in Florida. for the
That's
most
right.
part.
Oh, yes.
It's really.
And Boy Celestial, if you don't have this book, is really his own story about himself and his search. And he spent 3 years with, I was with Fenwick, and Fenwick gave me a lot of insight. Fenwick did the metering for it, and Ernest wrote the material. It is an epic poem that if you do not have this as part of your own experience, I recommend it highly, that you get your hands on Boy Celestial. I think I went maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years back in my 20s when it never left me. I had it with me all the time. And it is amazing experience to go through Boy Celestial, and just his flow of consciousness. About what you asked a minute ago, I have a wonderful story of Ernest had a cold one once and was going somewhere at the Institute, and somebody came up and got on his case because he had a cold. And Ernest said, "Well, I believe colds from confusion, and if I'm only confused once a year, don't worry about it."
Yeah.
So I guess your comment when you said, you know, he wished that he was gone with her. That wasn't just, that
Well,
wasn't a.
Oh, I just meant, yeah, he just, something, yeah, he just, he
What was
just.
that?
I said, is that what you call a metaphor? I don't know.
I'll tell you a personal story.
Speaking of,
I know.
My wife and I, Dr. Carol Neal, privately we called ourselves Ernest and Hazel.
Oh, that's cute.
Carol passed 14 years ago, and before she died, one of the last things she said was, "I want you to promise me not to come in after me." Because this was 14 years ago, and so I honored her advice. But
Very
I
good.
think like her, with me, she's never left here.
yeah.
And I think Hazel never left here.
Yeah, he was extremely devoted, they were extremely devoted to each other, very, very, very close.
Right,
And you all knew her.
Oh, yes.
yeah.
My sister. Another thing on display in the archives is a gold colored, a jacket that belonged to Hazel, and she had given to my sister. And, so my sister just gave it to me after the archives. Well, you know, I was at the Science Mind magazine, meeting this morning, and they're gonna have a wonderful thing going on. The 90th anniversary is in 2017, and they're gonna have wonderful things going on, and they're all encouraging stories about conversations with Ernest Holmes. Now, they also are saying imaginary or
Oh, yeah.
true.
Uh-huh,
And I have some
Fun.
true ones. I'm gonna get some,
nice.
see if we can get something out there.
Our history is so important, isn't it?
It is.
We're,
And
we're
you should-
hungry
you
to
should
hear
write
and to
something for
learn.
that.
Hmm?
Yes,
You should write
absolutely.
something.
Yeah.
Absolutely do.
I have the 50th anniversary where Bill Hornaday wrote a wonderful dissertation on Ernest, and they should republish that for them.
We wrote lots of little things in the 50th anniversary, and in that is a story that my sister wrote about Ernest and Hazel. It's called The Doll, where Ernest baptized my sister's doll.
Yes, and this is in the movie, in the video that we're doing, told by the woman.
Oh, that's fun. I read that.
The humor and they love children, but they love everybody, but they love children, and, the Hazel's idea, oh, let me go get Papa and he can baptize Henry, what's her name? Henry was the dog.
Cute.
Yeah.
And you said they love dogs, but did they have dogs?
Yes,
They had a big German Shepherd.
yeah,
Yes.
big, like German Shepherds used to be. Ernest would ride him to the institute.
And I love the book by Ernest and Hornaday.
Yeah.
That, what's the name of that one now? They changed the name.
Help for today.
Help for today.
No,
Now there's another one.
no, that was by
Oh, yes, I know what you're talking about.
the Aladdin's Lamp.
Aladdin.
It tells a
He wrote
lot,
that with Todd.
you get a feel of Ernest
Yeah.
from that book, a lot of experiences they had. And when Hornaday was talking at the cinema one time, he told how Ernest was always saying, "What did you say? Go back to first year." He
Go
would
back to
tell,
first
you know, "What? Take first year over."
I know, I wanted to do that a number of times. First year class.
I have a Florida question.
Yes.
When I was there for many years, as you know, what I had always heard was that your parents started Fort Myers and then Miami, or was that incorrect?
I don't know if they
That
oh,
came on the West Coast first,
they-
and then they moved to West
No.
Coast of Florida, and then to Miami?
no,
That's
they
not
were
right.
on the East Coast right away. Miami was first.
Okay.
Uh-huh. And they started Fort Lauderdale on a boat, the back of a
Right.
yacht,
I
yeah.
knew that. You know,
Yeah.
we found, I don't know if you know this, we had the charter from 1966 for Fort Lauderdale for RSI. And then
Yeah.
when Sherry passed away,
Uh-huh.
the caretaker that lived in the building, in the back of her closet, we found a 1960 charter from the United Church of Religious Science.
Yeah, yeah.
So somehow in there they switched organizations. And we didn't know about the old one, the original one until like 2003 or 4.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
There's a,
Everybody, ask all your relatives, you know, grandmas, aunts, look in the attics and the cellars. Another question over here?
I just
Over
have
here.
a question. I have never heard much about Hazel, except that they were very close. What book is out that would give me a sense of what Hazel was like?
My book, in his company.
Oh, but it is company?
And-
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
and Hazel's,
It's on sale at the archives table.
Hazel's in the movie.
Yeah, Hazel's in the movie. Do you all know Reverend Carol Huntley?
Yeah, she's
amazing.
playing Hazel.
We're
Oh.
from California.
Oh, of course.
So
What?
Hazel was an opera singer when she was younger,
Yeah.
and they
But she
got
never
married.
sang.
Hmm?
She never sang.
She never sang. Oh,
Yeah.
She studied,
But,
went to school,
yeah.
but she never sang, she's never on stage.
and
not
they're
even in a church or anything?
no,
Oh, no.
they married when they were in their 40s, right? And she was just an elegant lady, and she was a practitioner for many, many people, and like a mother figure for Peggy Lee and others, and
She's a practitioner along with Ernest for Peggy
Yeah.
and many other
Yes.
celebrities.
Yes.
yes,
I was Peggy Lee's practitioner, and I got a lot of insight that I never got from anybody else about them and how much she loved them, and it was they just about raised her.
If you will read her autobiography, she talks about Ernest 3 or 4 times in
Yeah.
her autobiography.
Yeah.
Peggy Lisa.
Peggy Lee.
Was Hazel clairvoyant, like they say?
I'm guessing, is that all there
Was
is?
Hazel clairvoyant?
What?
Hazel was intuitive.
Some people believe that she was, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, my dad mentions that that was Ernest. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that's the book he.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he said she had clairvoyant eyes.
Here's this. Here's
question back.
Reverend Carol here.
Well, I missed the first part of this, but one of the points of interest for me was the hospital, where they did spiritual mind treatment.
Oh, that was with Bill Hornaday, yeah.
Yeah, could you tell us, do you have any
Is that on the
information?
video?
Yeah, that's on the video too.
It's on the
Yeah,
video.
it's,
Yeah.
oh, good.
Yeah,
A story about
yeah.
Florida, that Ernest was supposed to go to Florida, to do something with your dad.
Do a cruise.
And they were going to do a cruise together, and Ernest didn't go. He sent Bill Hornaday.
Yeah.
And I have the lecture that Ernest gave because he filled in for Bill that morning, and he says they're having a religious science. They're having a religious science meeting on a raft in Florida, and said I decided I didn't want to go, so I'd send Bill Hornaday, and he says everybody's excited because they think there's a metaphysical expert coming to visit them, and the reason they think that because they never met him before.
Marlene, I don't think, there's probably some people in the audience who don't know the story of how your parents came to be coming to Florida to start the churches.
How that happened?
Yes, how that happened. Did you tell that?
Yeah.
Yes.
You were looking for pictures.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, Ernest wanted them to come out to Florida. Mhm.
And your folks started Fort Lauderdale. Did you start the Boca Center?
No, but a student of my dad's, and is Frank Simon, and and Frank said, "You come and help me," so I went and helped him, and then it was just before we became a church, Frank left, and I became the minister.
Okay.
But
How long have you been there now?
in Boca,
Yeah.
it's in 1979.
79, you've been in Boca since 79. I thought you'd been longer than me.
Well, I've been a minister before that
Okay.
in Fort Lauderdale.
Good.
But, yeah, what else was I gonna say here?
But I remember all the way back when you met in Jan McCart's theater, you were doing services in the round.
Yes, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
It really was, yeah. I love that. We were there and you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not as a minister then, right?
No, I was in show business in those days.
It's fun, huh?
Yeah.
Lots of our ministers were in show business, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm.
We had, let's see, you'll be celebrating what in 2019? Your
How many
40
years have you been a minister?
We've been in Fremont 41 years.
Okay, I think I'm 41 or 40.
40, yeah,
Something like that. But, yeah, do we have any more questions? Here.
Yeah, I have 1,000 questions, I'm sorry.
Great.
Cutting off when you're tired. We're always talking amongst ourselves about the relationship between, the science of mind, where he was at the time, where Einstein and all of the new, quantum mechanics came into view. And were they hanging out and, were they sharing ideas? And the other one was Bill W. from the recovery program. Were they ever,
Yes,
hanging
Yes.
out? Were they
Yes.
sharing ideas?
He knew Bill W., didn't he?
Yes,
And-
yeah, Bill was a student of his, as was Chuck C.
Was they what?
You know who Chuck C. was?
Yeah.
Richard Chamberlain's father.
Yes.
And when I found Founders, it had 20,000, I think around 20,000 members. And Chuck was on the board of Founders, and they used to have a meeting every evening, every Sunday evening, and it was just packed with people. And no, there was a lot of influence there. George Bendel he told me the story about when Ernest met Albert Einstein.
Oh, he did.
And when Albert Einstein, Ernest was with his niece, I think,
Yes.
when they visited.
Yes.
And he was sitting out in the foyer, and Ernest was pacing back and forth because he was about to meet Albert Einstein. He was just, oh my God, that's Albert Einstein on the other side of this door. And on the other side of the door, Albert Einstein was pacing back and forth because he was about to meet Ernest Holmes.
Isn't that good?
And
But-
in an article, there's some articles in Science magazine by Einstein, and in one of them he addresses his observation of Dr. Holmes as the one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life.
Wow, huh? And the thing is that all these scientific discoveries that have been coming along even since Ernest passed away, Ernest was talking about back in the 20s.
He was talking about 1918.
All these things they're discovering. He was talking
about 1918. Remember, he wrote the first 4 chapters on the dining table of Robert Bitzer's home in Boston, Massachusetts. And so if you read the first 4 chapters of the textbook, that was written around 1918.
Yeah.
The first four chapters of Science of Mind you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.